Joining us is Joelle Maslak, who is going to be talking to us about making work for neurodivergent people. Please make her very welcome.
I'm Joelle Maslak, she, her for my pronouns, and I work at Netflix as a network engineer. We do a lot of Python in the network engineering group. I want to thank North Bay Python for accepting this talk. You may want to have your camera handy, particularly if you're neurodivergent, on your phone to get some QR codes towards the end. But that information will also be available on a GitHub that I will share. In honor of my autistic community, get ready for an info dump. And to get started, I'm going to start with some humor about a couple of my identities. I know autistic people don't do humor, so I apologize. I forget sometimes. But we have this stereotype that all autistic trans women are software engineers. Capitalism has embraced it. You can search for programmer socks if you don't believe me. But that stereotype is not true. After all, and everyone that laughed, you're my people. So to start with, I'm only going to do a couple definitions. I promise I'm not going to do the typical diversity talk with 20 definitions of things. I'm not going to test you. You're not going to have a multiple choice quiz on the differences between these different words. But what is neurodiversity? It's the idea that there are infinite varieties of humans, that we all think differently. Everyone is part of neurodiversity, whether you have a label for your brain, or apparently some people don't have labels for their brain. Weird, but okay. You all are part of neurodiversity. Neurodivergence, on the other hand, is we are different from the assumed model of typicality. And you'll often hear that assumed model being referred to as a neurotypical. I don't know that there is such a thing, but there is certainly an expectation that brains are within, say, a standard deviation of that. We know that's not true. There's a lot of labels that can fit into neurodivergence, such as epilepsy, PTSD, ADHD, autism, dyslexia. That's just a few. There's many more. Okay, enough 101. I told you I was going to get through that pretty quickly. I'm going to start giving some practical tips. And so I'm going to start with capitalism. And, oh, that's the wrong slide. So capitalism. A lot of neurodivergent brains have trouble with capitalism. It's not designed for us. So, for instance, a lot of autistic people have a very strong sense of justice. That's maybe even stronger than our desire for money. And capitalism does not understand that. There's a reason when you see labor movements in tech, you'll often see autistic people and other neurodivergent people in those movements. So, yeah, that can be a barrier, and I want to acknowledge that. I also want to acknowledge this trend, which I think is harmful to us, and I'm speaking mostly here to my neurodivergent family, but that's this neurotypical full-stack developer. And I'm not talking front-end and back-end and that kind of thing. What I'm talking about is how we have devalued support roles in software development, how we've assumed that everyone can do these things good enough, and that's good enough is based on the neurotypical brain. So our profile differs, but we're still expected to project manage, write documentation, code, coordinate with other departments, negotiate, gather user requirements, advocate for budget, and who knows what else. And some of this we may be really good at, and others we may be not so good at. And that can be a problem. But we still have to operate in this capitalistic environment. I'm going to share a couple things that won't work first. The first one, trying harder. That's not going to work. It's not laziness. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this talk, it's you're not lazy. A lot of us have heard that our entire lives, but it's not lazy when you're expending more energy than other people to do the same thing. That's not laziness. So solving for laziness, treating it like laziness, won't help. So I want to talk about tech. And we don't need any more tech saviors. One of the two things I see in disability, and I see neurodivergence a lot of time as disability, the two things I hate more than anything else, the first one is disability simulations. Because the idea that I can experience for 5 minutes what it's like to be blind, when a blind person has learned to navigate life for years as a blind person, that's absurd. Putting a blindfold on me is not anything like what a blind person's experience is. But second to that is hackathons, because they can make ableism worse. And I'm talking specifically of disability hackathons to solve some problem with disability. The idea is that you can get a bunch of tech people that are maybe smart about tech, maybe not so much about disability, and they can get a very superficial understanding of a struggle and solve it in, say, 2 hours or a weekend or a week. No, that makes ableism worse. You're not listening to the person. So what I'm asking, and this talk is mainly geared towards neurodivergent people, what are your needs? What do you need? And that's what I'm asking you to think about as we go through this talk. There is positive things with tech, and I'm going to share some of those needs. A lot of this is going to just be ideas to get you thinking. But I want to start with this tale of two autistic tech workers. Myself and my best friend from high school, we're both autistic, we're both in tech. And we have very different communication preferences. And that's why it's so important to know each individual's needs and preferences, even if we have the same label. So with that in mind, how does this fit into employment? Well, I'm going to give, as I said, a bunch of examples of ways that this manifests in employment and things that we can do to help. None of them are going to help everyone. And you're going to see that when I give my list of things, it's very specific to me. It probably would not be what anyone else in this room needs. Okay. What I'm intending to do is think about what is your unique need and your unique traits. What would help you? So I'll start with this. This is some router output. I'm a network engineer, so I log into a lot of routers. This is not a work router. This is one of my routers at home. And one of the things that I need to do is be able to pick out information out of this output. For me, that's kind of difficult. So I wrote a tool to colorize that output. Red is good, or bad, I should say. Sorry. Green is good. I'm not red-green colorblind, so I can differentiate that fine. So I can see right away, oh, it's up, it's been up for 102 days, there's no output errors, but there is a handful of input errors. That gives me information as a network engineer to diagnose a problem. You can see some cyan. The description is this is between switch 8 and switch 3, and yes, I do have more than 8 switches at home. I am a network engineer, what can I say? That's useful information when I'm trying to see what is this interface connected to that's maybe down or showing errors. And then you see all the IP addresses colorized different ways. I took inspiration from other autistic people. I don't see numbers as colors, but other autistic people sometimes say they do. And I said, oh, that could help me because I cannot copy an IP address to save my life. I have difficulty with just that kind of number processing. So I colorize things based on an algorithm, and if I'm typing in an IP address and it shows up in the wrong color, I know I screwed up. That's immediate cue. And then the last thing you might see if you're close is that on long digit strings, I highlight groups of 3 numbers with an underline, alternating highlighting and not highlighting. That's a tool I wrote, very, very, very specific to my needs. It's not something that maybe would benefit other people in the same way that benefits me, but it makes me able to do my job. Some other tech I use, got birds. Just want to acknowledge that. I use a separate home and work phone because if I use the same phone for both, I would get so distracted during the day with social media or instant messaging. I needed that phone on the other side of my office. I turn off all notifications and badges with a handful of exceptions for the same reason. I don't care that there's a special on DoorDash today. I don't need that interruption. I disable animations, and this is a tip if you want to make your computer maybe a little faster and use Slack, turn off animations in the accessibility menu. Check your CPU usage when you're viewing a page with a bunch of animated reacts before and after you do that. If we all do this together, we can probably save megawatts of power. And I'm not joking. And then grayscale on my phone, my personal phone, because then it's less attractive to me. That's the ADHD part of me, is if I see the colors on my phone, then it draws my attention. Again, this is my needs. Your needs will be different. But I want you to start thinking about this. Other technology I use an extension called ReaderLine in Chrome. It follows my mouse and draws a horizontal, semi-transparent line across the screen, highlights just that line, so I can track that line when I'm reading it. I use all kinds of captioning technologies, including CART. I do want to appreciate white coat captioning here because this is like the best captioning service I've ever seen. I also use Chrome extensions to hide annoying page elements. If I have an ad or something that's refreshing, that is impossible for me to see that page now. So I need to hide it. And then I have a super annoying reminder program to remind me of those things I need to do once a week or once a day or something, called Do. It's on the Apple Store if you're in the Apple ecosystem. And the great feature about it is it will notify me, and then if I pick up the phone, look at it, and say, yeah, I should do that, I'm going to go do it right now, I inevitably get distracted, and I forget about it. 5 minutes later, it's notifying me again. So it's a very handy app if you struggle with that. But I also use non-tech. Biggest one for me is just working from home. I know that's a hard accommodation or adjustment to get. It should not be, but it is. But if you can get it, that can be very helpful to some people. It can hinder others. But for me, it means my sensory environment is all set up exactly for me. I control that environment completely. I'm a big believer in therapy and recommend if you're even thinking about doing it, do it. I would say if you're neurodivergent, and this talk's mainly for the neurodivergent people in the audience, find a neurodivergent therapist. Find someone that isn't going to try neurotypical therapy on a neurodivergent brain because it's going to be painful. Ideally, their neurodivergence and yours are similar, and you might have some success even if you've tried it with neurotypical therapy in the past and haven't. I discuss some of the upcoming meetings I have on my schedule with my boss because sometimes I don't know why I'm invited to a meeting. I don't pick up those cues. Am I supposed to just be there to represent the group by filling a seat? Am I supposed to be there to advocate something? Am I supposed to be presenting at this thing? I can ask my boss, and we have that relationship, and he can explain the politics maybe behind why I'm invited. I say no to a lot of work social events because they're not helpful to me. I can't hear in that kind of environment. They're usually in loud places. It's usually something that drains me, and they're usually in like evenings and stuff where I have to do stuff the next day, so I don't want to be tired the next day. So I might say no to a bunch. And then advocating and asking for help, and this is one of the hardest ones, is asking for the help we need. I appreciate this conference when they sent out the note and said, do you have any needs for accommodations? I replied, I said, yeah, I do. They asked what? I said, well, coming into a new space is really anxiety-provoking for me. It's really tough to go to a new place. So if I can get some kind of view of it ahead of time. And they invited me Friday to come down when they were setting up, and I could see the space, get all the anxiety out of the way, and then yesterday when I came, there is no anxiety. I knew this place. I've been here. I use colored overlays for reading printouts because that helps me focus on the writing. I don't travel and do meetings or important stuff on the same day because travel is so stressful. I need a break there. Fortunately, my employer's really great about this and has always been willing to let me stay in a hotel the day before and the day after. You may have seen me with this purple blanket. That's a weighted lap pad. That gives me sensory input, so I can sit through a meeting without feeling like I'm crawling out of my skin. Stim toys, everyone knows about them. And then talking to coworkers about my prosopagnosia, which is face blindness. I don't recognize people by face. If my family walked in right now, I probably would not recognize them. And that catches neurotypical people off guard. They think that I don't think they're important or I don't care about them, when it's furthest thing from the truth. I just truly don't recognize them. It's no more complicated than that. So a lot of different things, as you can see. There's no one thing that makes my life and makes work for me. Communication's another part that we may have struggles with, depending on our neurodivergence. For me, I need that positive feedback, or my anxiety starts building up, and I start saying, "Oh, they're not talking to me. I must be doing this all wrong." When maybe my management and my teammates are thinking, "She's doing great. We don't need to interrupt her. Let's give her time to concentrate and focus on her job." We're sending different messages because we're communicating across different neurotypes. They're used to talking to a neurotypical. My brain is used to getting signals from other autistic people who are very, very direct sometimes. So if I'm not hearing anything, I'm worried. Why aren't you telling me anything? What are you expecting me to pick up? And I talk to my coworkers and my team and my management about this, that this is my needs. I communicate best in writing for serious stuff, so that's what I do. If I'm going to advocate for myself at work, I'm going to do that in writing because I am most fluent in writing. That's my native language. Speech, this is difficult for me. I had to spend a lot of time learning how to use speech, and it still takes a lot more conscious effort on my part. Asynchronous text communication is like my native language. If I want to ask someone at work how to do something, I'm going to ask on Slack. And if they ask me on Slack, I'm like thrilled. I'm like, that's the perfect way to ask me. There are also other things that we can do, like job modification, another one that can be very difficult to get. But if you're on a team with a bunch of people doing the same job, chances are there's parts of the job that you maybe fit well into, and parts of the job maybe you don't fit as well into. And sometimes we can get really, really lucky, and it's exactly the opposite for someone else on the team. Where that's the case, you can do this even informally, but maybe even formally. My team at work, we're structured into 2 different sub-teams based on these needs. And when I was initially put on one sub-team, I'm like, this is great for me. This is the stuff I'm really good at. I love this, but I feel so bad for the rest of my team because they're getting all the, frankly, from my perspective, this is the shit work. What? And I talk to them and they're like, no, we love doing this kind of work. This is really rewarding. And I'm like, oh, I'm so glad you like doing that. And it was like this win-win where everyone actually was happy. So this can happen, and it's something to consider. But all of this, sometimes we need to get past this, I'm not enough. And it's, I'm not disabled enough, I'm not autistic enough, I'm not ADHD enough. I don't want to take away from someone else that needs this more than I need it. A lot of us get hung up on this idea of need. When people ask, do you need any accommodations? And we might interpret that literally, like, oh, I don't need that accommodation. Sure, I'm going to put in 10 times the effort everyone else is. I'm going to be stressed out, and I'm probably not going to do the job nearly as well as I could have. But I don't need it. I can struggle through this. You're not taking away anything from someone else. So I encourage you to ask for what you need. So how do you do this? How do you actually adjust your job? Well, my favorite approach is doing it unofficially. That light's flickering above your desk, you don't like that? It's distracting. There's ways to make a light bulb no longer work. You don't necessarily need to ask permission to do those because they don't necessarily need to know who did it. Don't do anything that gets yourself fired. But maybe there's some unofficial things you can do. Certainly there's things like you can wear a hat to work if maybe you're trying to restrict the visibility around you so you can focus on what's in front of you. You don't need to ask permission for that usually, unless you have a uniform code or something. You can just do it. Sometimes you can ask a manager. Maybe you have a really good relationship with your manager. Sure, there's a process to go through that the company maybe wants you to go through. You don't have to do that. You could ask the manager. For the harder accommodations to get, work from home comes to mind. Ask to do a trial. Say, can we try this for a month to see if it makes me more productive? That might be received slightly better than just asking to work from home in some cases, or when you're turned down from that. And then I want to talk about HR, but I'll do that on the next slide. HR has no idea how to help us. They can't know from a diagnosis. Remember that slide I showed with Dawn and myself having different communication needs? This isn't the fault of HR. It's not that HR people don't know what they're doing. It's that there is no one way to meet everyone's needs. They can't know just if we go to their office and say, hey, I'm ADHD, I need whatever you do for people with ADHD. They don't know what you need. So you need to tell them. These ideas that I presented that I do for myself are all on a GitHub. There's a lot more on this. Some of them help me, some of them help other people, but I encourage you to take a look at this. The next thing you have to do, though, is when you're asking for this stuff, if it's something where you might have to explain why you need it. Not everything you have to explain why you need it. Sometimes you can just say, I think I'll work better if we do things this way. But if you do have to explain it and you are going to talk about your neurodivergence, I'm not going to get into the details here because this could be a whole talk on its own, but I'd say ask these 3 questions. What do you want? Know what you want before you start disclosing. Know what the goal is. And then have you thought of the consequences, bad, but also good, of disclosing? Sometimes it will go better than you think. And then, who should you disclose to? I'm out to everyone. That's why I'm willing to give a talk about this. But not everyone wants to be in that position, particularly in this, I think the politically correct way to say is political climate. I have other words for it, but most of them are 4 letters long. There's also a lot of opportunity for community. And if you're neurodivergent, try to find your people. I know I'm autistic, and autistic people aren't supposed to want to be around other people, but I'll tell you a secret that we've been keeping from you neurotypicals. We actually do like being around other people. But sometimes it's nice to be around people that understand and think the same way we do. There's a lot of different kinds of communities. Sometimes companies have official or unofficial neurodiversity groups within them. That can be a good source, but I'd also encourage you to look outside the company. Don't make your only social connection people at your company. And if you don't see any of these communities, make one. That's what I did at my current employer. There wasn't a neurodiversity group. There is now. Sometimes it just takes someone saying, I'm going to start it and see who's interested. Related to Python, there is a neurodivergent Pythonistas Discord. If you're interested in that, feel free to join it. If you don't know if you're neurodivergent or not, and you're questioning, you're still welcome. If you don't do Python, but you're Python adjacent just by being here, feel free to join. This was started last year. A handful of us at PyCon US decided to start this, so we'd love more people to get involved. And then, kind of in conclusion here, if you want any of these resources, you didn't get any of the QR codes or URLs, it's at this address. So thank you, everyone.